I arrived here. I was 18. I was a developing player. So I was sure that I was going to change. When you arrive in this type of locker room, I met players. Players who had won everything. Players who had known everything in their career. Players with a lot of experience. I knew different coaches, so it allowed me to learn different philosophies also because they are three coaches who have a completely different way of seeing football. So, when you're a player, it allows you to add several strings to your bow, and I think I've also had more maturity in my game, since I've also grown with age. So, it gives a completely different player. Much more mature, even if I think I still have to improve on some aspects. But I think I also understood the importance in football and in this kind of club. That is Paris Saint-Germain. You have to pay attention to every detail of your game. Sometimes it's not necessarily only the ego. Sometimes we are in our bubble and we are locked in a world where we play every 3 days, where you are really in your search for performance and you do not necessarily see all the aspects of your game, so that's good too. Critics are not necessarily just typing. They are also sometimes reminder shots. They are also sometimes warnings. So it is also good to take this into account. After that, I think you shouldn't take it personally because it's not personal. It's not against me. These are just people who judge a player's performance at the moment T, and therefore it is something normal. And even more when you play at Paris Saint-Germain. It is the most watched club in the country. One of the most watched in the world. We talk about you every day. So we're not going to say only nice things. Otherwise it's too linear. The Parisian genius can be with the fake body of Neymar. The ball at the second post. Goal ball Mbappé. The shot is perfect. Depending on one team to another. You always have to adapt. Even if I think we are the type of team that can impose its style, we have the quality to impose ourselves very quickly in the game. So I think that we also want to establish that, to establish our style so as not necessarily always to adapt, because it still requires a lot of effort to adapt to the opponent, because each opponent has a particularity and a game philosophy of his own. The great players around you, you will benefit from them. Even if you don't score, you will have fun and you will succeed in winning titles. Because that is why we are here too. Today, I play in a team where the players who serve me are Messi, Neymar, Di Maria. It's easier. We're not going to tell stories. Maybe sometimes there's this attacking instinct of wanting to shoot, wanting to score. But sometimes, like I said, when you want to be a great player, a player who's still a special player, when you can do both, do not deprive yourself, because you both make a friend happy, but you also show that you can be unpredictable. Today, with the number of passes I've made, you don't know if I'm going to shoot or if I'm going to pass. Whereas before, of course, I scored a lot of goals. Forced goals too, which I put on thanks to talent. But people expected me to shoot. Yes, Kylian. He's the team's goal scorer. He's going to shoot. Whereas now, it's much more unpredictable. Well, that's different. It's also that when we were talking about maturity, I grew up and I understood that it was not going to prevent me from scoring goals, making passes. Now, to score against all the teams was not given. That's good too. But I think I don't count. I just think about leaving my mark on every game and helping my team afterwards. If I score against all the teams, that means we win. So that's good too. It's the game that dictates that, because it's a space that is freed up, that we may not have worked on in training, that the opponent hasn't seen, because the opponents play differently when they play against us than they normally do in the league. For example, and that's instinct. When a space becomes available, you know the player is likely to put it. You race or even to free up space. When we see, for example, the goals that Messi has scored, it is Hakimi who often frees up space for him. However, he doesn't touch the ball, but he brings him a player who allows him to go in and score on his foot. So that's really that too. Allowing something to be created, a movement. Try to be unpredictable too. Because that's it. If the ball doesn't get to me, it will get to someone else. And that's also what we try to work on. These automatisms that we try to create, to be run in as much as possible. Adaptation is faster when the human bond is strong. It helps. You have fewer complexes, fewer fears because of course when there are new players, they arrive with certainties, with patterns they have worked on. A player like Messi, he played 15 years in Barcelona, and for 15 years he did the same thing. In Barcelona, it worked and he's coming here. It's different, but I think we also create that. In training, we can create passing circuits, create things. That's what we do, even in games, because it's not necessarily only in tactical work that you can create a connection. You create something. You know the guy. When he's around, he can do that. He's likely to do that. You get to know the player because there is a difference between seeing the player on TV. We all watched the matches of the players who arrived. These are players who were known. But now, when you see them here, they are different. You know that he likes it, or a little less to do that. That's also adaptation. It's analyzing your teammates. I'm good with everyone. I speak several languages. So it also helps because there are players who don't speak. So it's easy. Afterwards, I've been here for a long time. So I'm one of the leaders in the locker room. I try to help everyone. Because I am convinced that we will need everyone to win. Because we have a lot of great players and everyone's time will come. Today maybe there are some who are a little more waiting in the starting blocks, as they say. But in the season, there is always a moment when it happens. When you are a player, there is your moment in the season. So we will need everyone. And that's also bringing people together. Because it's all together that we're going to want to win great things. Because that's what we want. I think that to make history, it's not just the statistical factor. I think you have to create emotion. That's also how it stays. But the statistical factor is also a factor. I think when you look at the numbers, it doesn't lie. It sums up an impact. It sums up a certain presence, a certain regularity. But I think it's not just that. But after the stats, it also makes you win. When you score goals, it's also for your team. It's not just for you. I am one of the players that we tried to put in the best conditions to perform. And I gave it back to the team. But the team gave it to me too. I need to feel the pressure. I need to feel the challenge. It has always been like this. I've always wanted to have responsibilities on my shoulders and be full of pressure. Even if it meant disappointing me sometimes. But it is learning. I never hid, and I think that's part of the adrenaline. I think we also play to play pressure matches. Matches that everyone is watching. The pressure. I take it positively and I like it. So I have no problem with that. On the contrary, I think it also pushes me not to fall asleep and to be as consistent as possible for my team. My goal has never been to be the 23rd or 24th top scorer in the Champions League. So that's the start. I always wanted to leave my name in the history of football, and I continue my merry way. For example, last year, I had a great individual year. I scored more than 40 goals. I scored in the Champions League. I was the top scorer in the calendar year. But we didn't win the league. We didn't win the Champions League. So in the end, I wonder if it's worth scoring 50 goals if you don't win? No. I would prefer to put a little less, around 30. to make decisive passes and that we take the championship and the Champions League. So individual goals. Of course. That's fine. But if you don't win, you half enjoy. It's really winning titles. Winning the Champions League. Winning the league and winning the cup. It is the most important. For the moment, we are on the right track because we are still in contention and we are doing well in all the competitions. But now, there are the big deadlines that will happen. That's what we have to prepare for.